Okay, now I gotta figure out my stupid. Here we go. Hold on. Yes. Hello.
Great. So let's get started, I guess. So one second, let me double. Yeah, I started recording. So first off, just introduce yourself however you would like to be introduced.
Sure. I am Zach Cohn. I use he, him pronouns. Anything else?
No, that's fine. Um, so let's get into it. So I guess first off, would you consider yourself an artist, and why or why not?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know. I'm tentative to say yes, despite if I don't think it's realistic necessarily, but I'd love to do acting professionally. If I won the lottery, um, both monetarily and you need to kind of win the acting casting lottery to do that. I feel like. Despite that, I don't know if I would say I'm an artist because it feels like it takes away from people who are really doing it professionally and who kind of know what they're doing, which I don't. Um, so I guess I'm an artist in the way that every single other person on earth is an artist. Like I wouldn't. So no is the answer. The short answer is no, not really.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is, what would define an artist? Like, at what point would you be considered an artist?
I don't know. I feel like it's less about like what you do professionally and what you make, but it's also what you do professionally. So I don't actually know. Um, like I don't have some like once I do this, I would be an artist thing. I don't know. I really have no idea. I just have never imagined myself defining myself as an artist and not like someone who does artistic stuff on the side of a more traditional academic or professional life. Traditional, whatever that means.
What do the air quotes mean?
I don't know. There's no tradition. There's no like real job, But like I picture like a desk job or like a monetarily centric,
Hmm.
money centric job. Um, in that I make money or I deal with money, which is maybe a silly threshold, but I don't know. I would like. I think yeah. I don't know. If I say I don't know. You get it. Like a desk job maybe.
Yeah, that's very fair. Um, so I guess sort of adding on, what would you consider good art?
Hmm. So the Fieldston answer, or rather, it is it's art that challenges and makes the receiver of the art, whatever that is, the viewer, the audience, the whatever, the listener, uh, think about things and challenge their beliefs. However, I think that's omitting the very important aspect that is entertainment in some form. In that, like, if you have like art that, or if you make something, like if I made for you what I call a video auditory video piece of art, and it was me screaming into the camera, right, just for hours, just yelling into the camera. Now, it would be annoying and obnoxious, and I don't know if it would be entertaining if I just for literally 10 hours straight. And okay, better example. There's some filmmaker thing that like some person in Britain, I think, or England, I don't know. They have like a review board for films, and they have to watch every single film that they put on. I'm so sorry about the sound. Is this bothering you?
No, it's fine.
Okay. You have to watch like every single thing, and so I think I've heard that I don't know if I watched a video on this or something, but that some people kickstart fundraised or whatever they could have 10 hours of film of paint drying on a wall, and they just filmed it, and then they made the people they had to watch it, like they just had to. So that is that art? I don't know. I'd say yes, but I think it depends on the recipient. In that, like, for the people watching it, I don't know if it was art necessarily, aside from just an obnoxious thing to do. But for everyone else, it is both entertaining and makes a point that makes you think. And so, like, me hearing about it, I would consider it art. I don't think if I had to watch it, it would be considered art. Or at least not good art, is the question originally, I guess. So, in summary, it needs to be challenging and make a point that maybe isn't like an oversaturated point and that everyone's making the same point. Um, and it needs to be at least somewhat palpable, palatable, palatable, palatable. Like you can deal with it. And even better, you want to watch it.
So, what about stuff that like is very emotionally challenging? That like to the extent that it would be unpalatable. For example, there's this film that I watched with my family called Mother, where if you're not familiar, there are very disturbing scenes involving people like eating children and like really messed up stuff. And so I guess the my question there would be, would something like that be, because to many, if not most people, that would be considered unpalatable.
Yeah. Well,
But
why did you watch
like,
it?
to make a point, it was challenging. So would that be considered art or no? Because it may be missing that
My
aspect.
gut reaction is yes, but it also doesn't jive with my definition, so I don't know. What was New York City? Why did you watch it?
What was that?
Why did you watch? I'm gonna go inside. I'm sorry. Why did you watch it?
Well, it's made by a really good filmmaker that we really like, and I really like the movie. I think that um, uh, it makes really interesting points. The whole thing is like sort of an allegory for like various biblical stories. Or not an allegory. It's heavily referencing biblical stories, I guess, and I thought that it did a really interesting job of that. And as I said, good filmmaker and a lot of good actors and stuff.
But,
Um,
but like you said, you liked it. Like, isn't there some sort of enjoyment in there, even if it's not enjoying the actual gore of it, but enjoying the experience? Like, I don't know.
yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it. I thought that it made like really interesting points and like a lot of the visuals were like even the ones that were gory or disturbing were just very sort of surreal and it was interesting watching how they sort of create this world. There was a lot to enjoy in it. And I mean, it's been a really divisive movie for that reason. That people have really strong opinions about it. But yeah, no, I thought that was a good sort of example of this.
So maybe I'll amend my definition. I don't really know. I haven't really thought about it. But for now, I'll amend my definition to say it needs to have some engagement factor. You don't necessarily have to enjoy it or be entertained. In that, like, watching paint dry on a wall for 10 hours straight, the only emotional response you're getting is, I'm so bored, maybe some anger. And if bored is how you're feeling, then you're not engaging in it. And it's not an engagement, not an engaging something. Yeah. Like, I don't know, like I'm thinking like of like action movies that are like really dumb action movies that are just like shooting it. I don't know that that's art because what is it really doing? It's not making any points, and frankly, I'm bored. um, So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's art, but it's not good art. I don't know.
Um, so what if, and then we can move on from this. But what if there was a piece of art where the intention of the artist was to make the audience. So, for example, Andy Warhol made a series of 24-hour long films where it was just a person's face for 24 hours and nothing happened. In some of them, the facial expression changed, but in some of them, it was essentially just a photo for 24 hours. And so that, I mean, it's unclear what his goal was, but it can be presumed that he was anticipating people would be bored when watching that.
Yeah, you'd hope that he would think about that. Yeah, I would say that in my opinion, not just because I don't enjoy it, but because I don't really come away from it feeling anything other than, well, that was a waste of my time.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not good art. I don't know how you would define art. I think it's really general. Anything could be considered art, I feel like. But I don't think it's good art if all your go if you leave engaging with it just thinking that was a waste of time and then just forgetting about it, then it really doesn't really do its job. Because even just like purely enjoying, purely in like entertainment value art. Like, okay, I saw SpongeBob. I talk about this in class. I don't know if I did. Yeah, that did make any point to me that I was like, wow, that's really deep, or it didn't make me talk about anything afterwards. But I left feeling like that was worth my time. I don't know if it's good art because of that, but I think that is an important factor. Leaving thinking it was at least worth your time.
That makes sense. Um, so sort of moving on to the experimental sort of aspect. What is like experimentation, or what does it mean to experiment generally, not necessarily just with art?
When my first thought goes to in Intro to Nuclear Science today. We were talking about how ancient Greek philosophers were brilliant, and Democritus had this great idea about atoms, and it was kind of not how we think of them today, but it was like the foundational piece. And then, Aristotle came along, people liked his idea better, they forgot about Democritus. And they didn't do experiments, they just liked to reason. So we were thinking about what is an experiment? And I guess it is coming up with an idea and testing it to see if it works in some way. And so the definition, how you define working, I don't know in art. I think it depends on your goal. But I think that's an experiment. Like you have an idea, you execute, and you see how it turns out and how it's received and what it does, and then that's experimenting. So just idea, test, achieve your goal, question mark? Or what do you learn? And then that's experimenting, maybe.
So would you say that for experimentation you have to have like a designated goal that you're trying to see if this thing reaches a certain point or fits a certain goal?
Yes and no, in that yes, you should have a goal, and I think everyone always has a goal, but no, you don't have to have a hypothesis. Like, will it or will it not look green? Or specifically for art, I hope that they clap. It will work if they clap at a certain decibel point, decibel level. Um, well, that's you don't need that, but like your goal should be to do something. Like, why are you making it? Like, why are you making art? Even if it's like to make yourself not bored, like to give yourself something to do. Well, then that's you still have a goal. Like it's the whole acting thing. Like goal, expectation.
Yeah.
You have a goal. Everyone has a goal, like, even if it's not. If you can't like put your finger on it, I feel like that's always a goal.
So does this sort of experimentation, does this like have inherent value? Like is it always good, would you say, to sort of test stuff out like this?
Art for art specifically?
Uh, I'll leave it up to you whether you want to answer for art specifically or just society in general.
Um, yeah, I think experimentation is never bad because in and of itself, maybe if you decide that you don't want to do your homework and instead you're gonna, you know, I have an idea. I'm gonna dump water off my balcony and see what happens. Well, technically, I think you're experimenting because you don't know what's gonna happen, but it's not necessarily worthwhile. You shouldn't be doing it. But in and of itself, just like, does it have innate value? I think so, because just by the nature of experimentation, you're going to learn something or learn that, yeah, you're going to learn something. So, like, even if it just reinforces stuff you already knew, you're learning that it reinforces stuff you already knew. And I don't think there's anything bad about doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think different experimentation has different value. Like, again, my pouring the thing off the balcony is technically experimentation under my definition. I think it has less value than, um, you know, doing some scientific experiment that has never been done before. Just because the best case scenario, what do I find out? I find out that my neighbors were walking outside of their balcony and now are soaking wet and hate me. Like, that's the most I could learn, I feel like. Whereas, I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now turning sort of specifically to Fieldston, would you say that Fieldston sort of encourages experimentation or not, and why?
Artistic or in general, or both.
Both, I guess.
Um, yes and no. Yes, they do, and no, they don't. They give us the freedom to experiment, mostly. I'm thinking artistically right now. However, there are severe limits on that experimentation. I guess there's different kinds of experimentation in terms of when you're experimenting, are we talking about ideologically, like what you're getting across, or are we talking about like what is it like to put on a virtual show where you don't see anyone's face, for example? I don't know, but like technically versus what is it like to put on a play that I don't know is pro-Trump? Okay, sure, whatever. I don't know, but it's on the mind. That's different than technical things. So like there's severe technical limitation. I think there's less so for ideologically. However, um, in this recent play that they did, um, they used that ticket platform thing, not because they needed to, like they're contractually obligated to, which they are for this coming production. That is doing because it's in the contract of the script that they're paying for, that they can only put it on once and it can't be on YouTube, But they did it because they wanted to control who sees it, because it could be viewed, if it was viewed by an outsider who doesn't have the Fieldston lens, as who knows what it could happen. And so they restricted that. So if the original goal, if Derry school, I don't know, but if I would say it's more experimentation just put out in the open public and leave it on the Fieldston website, right, and just see what happens. But they restrict that because they have motives, they have reasons, they need to make money, they don't, like all these different things. And so, do they allow experimentation at Fieldston? Yes and no. Yes, up until it harms the bottom line, I think. And expression of political views I include in experimentation, in that, like, if I have some radical view, which I don't, I'm pretty middle Fieldston situation here. But if I do, I feel like I'm not, I don't feel, I think it could be an experiment, just like shout it to the heavens in a classroom environment. See how what happens. but there's a limit to that. In that, like, let's say I have a really hateful point of view, um, which is different than having a radical point of view. But like, if I think, I don't know, I think if you have hair past your shoulders, you should be executed. Okay, great. Wow, look at me. A real hateful view there. Well, my shouting that view to my class is gonna get some reaction. It's an experiment. The school doesn't want that to happen. I think it, ultimately goes back to. I'm just very cynical, but it goes back to the money thing, because yeah, they don't want to hurt people, but I think ultimately it's because they would lose people, and because they are an institution that runs on money as much as it wishes to be just an educational thing. So they let people experiment, but there are limits to that experimentation.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely sort of aligns with what I've noticed. Um, so I guess sort of following up with that, do you think that that's the right move? Do you think that Fieldson should create more room for experimentation or less, or do you feel like this is sort of the responsible move for them to be making here?
So that's hard to answer because it depends on the kind of experimentation, I think, in that some experimentation is more productive than other kinds of experimentation, as I said. So if my experimentation is to go blah, 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 for an hour this through my entire class, every time they mute me, I just unmute and go to the screen. Well, that's experimentation. I don't know how they're going to react, but like, not good, because it hurts not only my educational ability, like my ability to learn, but also that. But I do think it is a good thing. So to restrict that, I think good job. However, I think if they really cared, again, good is also how do you define good? But if I'm thinking about being most productive in terms of allowing people to learn. And so that's my definition of good for this segment of the conversation. So if we define good as that, is it good to limit experimentation? Yes, in that example, but not in terms of don't put it on YouTube, the play. Like, okay, but like, what are we doing there? That's hurting people's, like, we're not protecting people's ability to learn. In fact, I think it's hurting people, because I'd love to see, the New York Post pick up that play, someone watch it all the way through and comment on it. I'd love to see. I think it'd be fascinating. I think it'd be really an interesting learning opportunity. But it's not going to happen. Um, Did I think the play was the best play in the universe? No, but I think it does say something about Fieldston, or at least what it says about Fieldston says something about Fieldston. Um, so, as with every answer here, yes and no. Um, but where it does limit the ability, or where it does prevent people from learning more, I think it's bad.
That makes sense. So, I mean, that's all that I had prepared. So, do you have any, I don't know, final anythings?
Um,
You're allowed to not.
I don't, but I am just curious. What is the end goal of this?
Yeah. So basically, what my project is I'm doing these interviews, and I'm doing a ton of them. I have like 6 this week. It's crazy, but I'm doing a ton of these interviews, and after each interview, I'm making a piece of art, either about something that we talked about in the interview, or just reflecting on my feelings about it, or whatever it may be. And the end like product is gonna be like probably on like a website or Pinterest or something like that, uh collection of all the footage of the interviews, and probably like highlight reels or whatever, because some of them are kind of long. um and all the art that I'm trying to decide if I'll put all the art that I produce, or just stuff that I think was good or that I liked. But yeah, some collection of the footage of the interviews and the art that I produce.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, have you had other interviews yet?
Yeah, I've had a couple. I had a
You don't have to tell me who it is, but I am curious what they said and how much it's different from what I said. If you can tell me that.
I mean, yes. I would say that I've had one interview so far where we talked a lot about this sort of stuff. The other interview, I've had two interviews so far, and they weren't. One of them wasn't. It was interesting, but it wasn't particularly useful.
Okay.
But the one that was sort of about this stuff, it was definitely different. The guy was like an experiment. He was French, and he was an experimental artist, and he's like an older guy, so he obviously has had like a different sort of life experience than you or I. So I think definitely influenced his views. So like when we were talking about what experimentation is, I think that he just all of his answers were quite long, so I'm having trouble sort of recalling it now. But it was definitely sort of, I guess, more broad or more vague than we were saying. But you'll be able to see all the interviews that I do in like 2 months. So
Okay, sounds good. All
that's
right, cool.
what we do.
All right, bye bye.
See ya. Bye.